Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. So let's bring in Landon Swan. He's a co-founder at Lightfolio. Welcome back to the show, Landon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're talking more airlines. It's just been a drubbing across this industry over the last 3 months since mid-July. A lot of the airlines hit 52-week highs during that segment. And all you heard about, Landon, was demand, demand, demand. They're starting to slowly increase capacity, not to where it needs to be, but where they're comfortable making profits. So are you seeing data reflective of the moves in the stock that we've seen? Because it doesn't seem like demand's waning at all, but I'm sure margins are getting hit by these jet fuel prices.
Yeah, you got to be right. I mean, this has been a drubbing. Like, this is what I would call a healthy downtrend in this stock. If you look at it over the last few months, it's just been lower pretty much every day. And it's really, it's really struggling, but demand is there. I mean, when you look at business travel, it's slightly, it's kind of holding, but overall travel demand is up. Business, I think, kind of being the exception of it just kind of being flat. But United's had a lot of success. They are, their international passengers are up about 44% on a year-over-year basis. They're expanding into the international markets. They're expanding their fleet domestically, and they're also buying larger aircraft instead of getting more routes. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle all of this, because, like you said, I mean, there's kind of a trade-off between supplying all of that demand and getting the price that you want as an airline, because we've all seen what happened to airline prices over the last couple of years. They've gone up significantly, and it seems like every plane I get on is full, where it used to be kind of half full. And I think they've kind of figured out the recipe for success here. But I will tell you that mentions are strong. They're up significantly on a year-over-year basis. Actually, web visits are up as well on a year-over-year basis. They're actually up. United's web visits are up more than any of the other airlines. They're all up, the big four, except for Southwest, down just slightly at -3%. Here we've got the mentions count, and you can see this is, mentions, people talking about United. It's up about 40% on a year-over-year basis. Not surging right now. It's just a lot stronger than it was, and it's kind of holding. A little dip over the last couple of weeks, you can see there, but it's still holding at pretty good levels while the stock is very, very low. So this is a bit of a divergence opportunity, a divergence play here where the stock doesn't exactly match up. Now, of course, there's a lot that goes into an airline stock price. It's more than just consumer demand, but at Lightfolio, that's what we can measure. And generally speaking, it's been a pretty good predictor, but it's not perfect. I will say, when you look at the web visits, like I was saying, United is leading the way. They're up about 18% on a year-over-year basis. Delta right behind them at 17, and American at 11. Southwest is the only one that's negative. And I think, again, we talked about this before. This has a lot to do with them dropping the ball last holidays. So we've got, winter coming up. Hopefully United handles it well. I know that, Newark is a big one for them, and they've got to be able to make sure they handle the weather up there in New Jersey, and hopefully they can handle everything that's coming their way. But the data is showing us that United is doing really well. This is not my favorite airline. It almost pains me to say it. I've only had negative experience with them. I avoid them pretty much personally, but you're not here for my opinion. You're here for the data, and the data says that United is doing extremely well, and we're looking at a potential bottom here on this stock, and heading into this earnings report, we're actually positioning ourselves to be fairly aggressive to the bullish side.
Landon, I've said this on this show before. Airline stocks are volatile in normal times, right? We're in highly abnormal times right now, but everything about United's numbers are doing extremely well. But there's this one word that really poisons not necessarily an airline, but the stock of an airline, and that is capacity. And capacity, year over year, Tom, up 16% capacity. And when you hear that word, and when stock traders hear that word with any of these airlines, they hit the stock on capacity numbers. And so the fact that they held capacity low for a while, and now we're adding it by almost a sixth, if you think about it, that's how can they turn that around? Do you guys follow capacity data, or are you just pure web visits, things like that? Because you're right. I believe that every airline has their spin on the wheel where they're unpopular, but United has remained popular for a significant period of time.
They haven't. And I'll tell you what, yes, we primarily measure demand, but I would be very interested to know what those capacity numbers are on a year-over-3-year basis. Like, what was it pre-shutdown? Because I know that so many flights got not just canceled, but like those legs got eliminated during COVID, and it seems like they're really taking their time to bring them back. And so I'm not personally as scared of a plus 16% on a year-over-year basis because I'd like to see the data. My gut is that we're not where we were 3 years ago. But again, I don't have that data. So if you have it, let me know if I'm wrong. But I know that the demand's there. We talk about this, this is kind of like the Tesla argument is you can find a lot of things wrong with that company 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but everybody wanted one, right? Everybody wanted one of those cars. And so if you have the demand, you can figure it out. So what I'm saying with these companies, with airlines, especially United right now, is they've got the demand. People want to fly. People are talking about flying. And that's a good situation to find yourselves in. They're going to find a way to turn that into profit. And whether that's, if they get a little greedy and they increase capacity to try to make more, okay, or if they keep it tight and they increase prices like they have in the past, either way, I think it's a good problem to have is people want to fly in your airlines. And what we're seeing, again, is pretty strong numbers on a year-over-year basis for both just social chatter and web visits.
Yeah, and if you go to those mentions and you overlap it on that chart that you've got there, Landon, I mean, the stock sold off pretty significantly. Kevin mentioned the capacity issues. Jet fuel prices are going to come into play here as far as margins go. But when you look at that, does that tell you that your data is kind of ahead of the game here, where the stock price is selling off unnecessarily, but at the same time, as Kevin mentioned, there's still a lot of headwinds?
Yeah, so that tells me that it kind of confirms that we don't track everything with airlines, right? I mean, this is not a retail shop where the number of people that go in equals the number of times the cash register rings. I mean, it is not a one-to-one. There's a lot more that goes into airline stocks. It's not our strongest sector like Folio. However, the data has been fairly predictive in the past. It's murkier, but if you've got the data on demand, it's definitely an advantage. And the fact that demand is holding and increasing while the stock is selling off puts me in the bullish camp, because this is, if the stock was basically where it was 6 months ago or 3 months ago at those highs, I'd be pretty neutral on it. I'd say, yeah, it makes sense because the data is strong. But given that consumer demand is strong and the stock is sold off, all else being equal, we're extremely bullish. But knowing that those other things, that all else is a little murkier, and there's a lot of things that nobody knows. I think that our guess is as good as anybody's on those, because the market clearly doesn't understand it. So that information is not out there. So with what we do know, consumer demand, I'm betting bullish.
Yeah, and I think you guys were bullish on Delta too, but sometimes it doesn't matter, as Landon made that point.
It doesn't matter unless you're Southwest. Then it matters.
Yeah, maybe a little bit there. Yeah, they might have some trouble there. All right, thanks to Landon. Landon, appreciate it. Thanks for the data.